This tiny fishing harbor is called Bitao Yugang. This is the most southern fishing harbor.
这个地区以前它就是鲸鱼的坟场，这个遗址就是当时鲸鱼要上来的拖上来的地方，是在船上打到的样子。这个当时来的时候味道很臭，
如果再闻一次，
我也受不了。
Can you believe how beautiful this is? I'm on the Hangcheng Peninsula in Kanding National Park. Over there, you can see Maobi Toh, which is the point we crossed with the boat. Hobihu, which is the harbor kind of in the middle. And now we're very close to Eluanbi, the most southern point of Taiwan. And we're in this tiny fishing harbor. This tiny fishing harbor is called Bitao Yugang. This is the most southern fishing harbor. But in between, we have Nanwan, this large bay. This area has a lot of historical value, but it's also a famous place where people come in the summer times. There's a lot of beaches, sandy beaches, and even coral beaches like this. But the reason I'm here is more to talk about the historical part of it, in particular, the whaling industry and some of the other historical aspects of Taiwan from days gone by. Let me first introduce this cute little harbor, Bitao Yugang, because it is the most southern harbor in Taiwan. It's a Class 2 harbor and it's very tiny. Old man and the sea. Just kidding, this is my dad. I've taken him along to I've taken along to Bitao Yugang, the most southern fishing harbor in Taiwan. And its small size doesn't show the fact that it's actually quite active. There are 9 sampans here, and it's kind of too small to drive my boat in. It's very shallow, so I'm just here on foot. We've come all the way from Hobi Harbor, but we're not going to drive into this harbor. The lighthouse, Taiwan's most southern part, Eluanbi, is just a few meters from here over this rise. You can actually see it if you stand on the rocks. So that is how close we are to the southernmost point of Taiwan. Let's go take a look at the lighthouse, and I'll tell you some things about this part of Taiwan you never knew before. We're now on Taiwan's most southern point, Eluanbi Lighthouse. This lighthouse was originally built in 1883, and it was set up as a fort with a garrison inside to defend itself against outside attack. It had 6-meter high walls and even gun ports. These lighthouses are very important to the fishing industry because there are many shipwrecks along the southern part of Taiwan, and particularly this area because of its coral reefs. Originally, even Bitao Fishing Harbor was part of the construction of this lighthouse. It also dates back to the late 1800s, where the coral was blasted out so that ships could come in to supply and maintain the lighthouse on this part of Taiwan. We are only 140 kilometers off the coast of Philippines' closest island, so that's very, very close here. In the southern part of the Hangcheng Peninsula, all the way from Hobihu to Bitao Yugang, there are 2 other fishing harbors in the middle. One is Tanzai Yugang, and the other is Xiangjiawan Fishing Port, Banana Bay Fishing Port. These harbors have a few things in common. First of all, you can see all around here is coral, and that's the reason you have these R-style boats here that can go in very shallow water. And that also is a reason that the water here is so clear, because this area is a protected area within the Kanding National Park. This whole area has a long fishing history, and it also has an interesting part in terms of its whaling history. when the Japanese came here well over 100 years ago. And we're going to talk about that and explore that a bit later. Sun, sand, bikinis. We're in Nanwan. This is a favorite place of people to come to in Kunding and enjoy the salt water, enjoy the sun, and go swimming. But what many people don't know is that this actually belies the true history of this place. Let's walk over here and take a look. This coral outcrop is not natural. It is the beginning of a runway into the ocean built during the Japanese occupational period, where they pulled the whales up onto this area so that they could cut them up and process them. And that is an interesting fact that many people don't know about Nanwan. It was actually at the center of Taiwan's whaling industry at the beginning of the last century. We're going to explore a little bit more about this. We're going to come back at low tide so that we can see the extent of these cement planks and learn more of the history of this place. It's always been my goal to tell some of the old fishing stories of Taiwan, because this history is being forgotten as time goes on. The story we're going to talk today about, as I mentioned before, deals with the whaling industry here in Nanwan. And we've come back at low tide here, and you can see the ramp they used to pull the whales up on. The last whaler in Taiwan unfortunately died a few years ago. But to preserve his story, we've actually found somebody who has first-hand knowledge of the whaling industry in Taiwan, and he's come here to talk to us about it. Nian 老师，你好，
你好。
我们的 viewer 想多一点了解那个金鱼的以前的情况是怎么样的，你能不能介绍一下
？OK， 好，那我来告诉你哦，是前面这个海洋哦，这个地方叫南湾，以前的名字叫大阪乐。前面我们看到那个地方就是金鱼最喜欢来的地方。这个地区以前它就是金鱼的坟场，这个遗址就是当时啊金鱼要上来的。拖上来的地方，这边就是工厂了。这边整个都是工厂，
都是工厂。
对，这边它的工厂、办事处、工厂就在这个地区。
那个行业，金鱼的行业是什么时候开始？
哦，是在日据时代。
我看那个照片呢。
哦，这个照片，这就是你看，这个就是这里啊。
哦，真的。你刚说了那个行业、办事处处理的都在这个牌，
就在这个地方啊，这个办公室。那这是它的厂房。这个地区天气好的时候，金鱼的油可以做肥皂。所以这个地方满地都是在晒那个金鱼啊，变成肥皂的那个状态，就在这个地区。这个当时来的时候，味道很臭。
对，我听说味道很重，我不知道是不好的味道，是不是？
非常不好。
那你自己记得那个味道是不是？
是的。
如果再闻一次，
哦，我也受不了。那个鱼腥味很臭的。我的叔公他是台湾最后一个捕鲸的那个高手，也是捕鲸人。
哦，我看到他的资料，他已经没了，是不是？
对，他92岁走掉，他的名字叫蔡文进。他说啊，那个天空上那里只要有云的时候，有雾的时候，就是金鱼出现的时候，因为金鱼会喷水，它要换气，喷水的时候天空就有雾气啦，所以他捕鱼的人眼睛要很厉害。我看到那里啊。有雾气啊，那边就是有金鱼的地方，所以他当时是跟着日本的技师学的。
那个金鱼打金鱼是不是有一个固定的时间，几月到几月？
有国历的1月份，他从越南，然后到台湾，那过来到这个大阪乐，大阪乐就现在的南湾了。这个地方是最多了，因为这个地方的海域啊，那个浮游的生物特别的多。
So I want to ask a little bit more when they caught the whales, how they would come and process them here. And let's go take a closer look at this ramp that they built in the early 1900s.
你看，这在船上打到的样子，一定要绑在金鱼的尾巴，让它没有力量以后，把它从海外拖回来，就拖到这个地方。你看，这个就是金鱼拖到这个地方来以后，有一个。专门在途经的人，他要穿着雨鞋，高高的雨鞋，底下有钉子，
对，因为很滑，是不是？
对。然后有一把刀，就这样割， 而且要一天把它处理好，因为那个时代没有那么冷冻那么好的设备，所以当天要赶快把它处理好。
一天处理完那么大的鱼，那他们怎么分呢？
哦，很厉害的哈。第一个肉，肉就卖掉，有的去做罐头，有的现场卖。那骨头呢？它有的可以做化妆品，也可以做艺术品。那另外它的油呢更厉害，这里现场就开始做处理了。还有它的肚子里面那个肠啊那些东西，对不对？你觉得它要干嘛？做肥料。所以一天就把这些所有的东西都处理完了。
所以人的东西没有浪费的，
绝对没浪费，而且它是很高经济价值的。
All of this happened between 1913 and 1942, the Japanese occupation. But do you think that the whaling industry in Taiwan ended then? It didn't. Let's go learn some more somewhere else. This is the Luo Feng we've talked about before. Remember when it was so rough out on the water? This is what causes it. Anyways, I wanted to show you this place because this is where the whales used to be caught, in this area here, as well as on the other side in the Nanwan harbor. We're on our way to Xiangjiawan Banana Bay, which is where the whaling industry moved after it was finished in Nanwan. Let's go take a look. But for the meantime, enjoy the wind. It's intense, and look how rough the water is here.
Taiwan 在当时日本殖民的时候是在南湾的，
对，我们去过。
光复以后10年后，1955年在这个地方。
为什么？
因为那个地方烧掉了。
烧掉了是什么原因？
烧掉了是因为日本他离开了，他不愿意把东西留下来，可能他烧掉。可是台湾觉得鲸鱼是一个很大的利润，所以10年之后，1955年在这个地方重新开始。据说当时以当时的那个币值来算，一个月一艘船一个月可以有600万
，600万
不得了的数字。
以前的情况就是
看不到，
什么都看不到。
我刚刚让你看照片，
这是香蕉湾，
对，就香蕉湾的渔港你看这个还是有站板的，就在这个位置。捕获的时候，人都站在那个珊瑚礁的上面那这个地区把它扩建了，变成渔港了，所以这个地方是有木栈道的，鲸鱼在这里。工厂在这个地方是整个都是，这是
香开市，
香开市，就在这里的这就是了，对。
我想问，他们在这里捕那个鲸鱼到什么时候？
一直到国际组织干预了，说因为这个东西不能长期的捕猎太多了，大概在80年代就被禁止掉了，
这没了。
对，因为数量要控制，要 control， 对。
I've always tried to tell the true story of the fishing traditions in Taiwan, and while the whaling industry is no longer part of that tradition, it's still a very important part of the history of Taiwan. And there are fewer and fewer of people who remember this. So it's very important for me to introduce these stories to you, introduce the history of this Hangzhou Peninsula so that you understand it's not only about the rich coral beauty, the diving that you have now, the beaches, but in fact, this part of Taiwan was an important financial area because of the whaling industry back over 100 years ago. As we go on our journey, I'll be bringing you more and more stories of places forgotten, of old fishermen who are telling about traditions that have long gone by. Join me for the next adventure, and we'll find something new and interesting to discover about Taiwan's fishing harbors.